Um, who are we? Who is me? Who are you? Now, it could have been that I could have just as easily have been you. Or I look at a dog or a cat or a mouse or an elephant or any other organism that has a brain that's capable of feeling, that it emotes, it senses that it itself exists as a self, as an existent, sentient, feeling being. I could have just as easily have been that. Or I look at all the other people in the world. I look at people I've known, people I know now, people that I see, and I could have just as easily have been one of those other people, but I'm not. I am this centrally located, isolated, central person here and now, this consciousness. But I could have just as easily have been any other consciousness of another human or another animal, except that I would have been that consciousness. That, I think that's what people are trying to just explain by consciousness being universal. That you really believe that you are not the only real person that exists. You are not a solipsist. You have refuted solipsism because solipsism is erroneous and false. Because for somebody to think that they're the only real person, that they are the only real consciousness, and that everyone else is a machine or a robot that doesn't feel, that's just a fiction, just a puppet, or just a reactor that's reacting from a stimulus response, and there's nobody there, they're a zombie, and they're the only real person, that's a solipsist, that's false. Now, taking that to another, looking at it from another point of view, in that all these other people, all these other beings, other animals, they are just as much of aware of themselves and feel that they are existing as me. So why is it so ridiculous to assume that what I'm saying before, that I could have just as easily been one of them? I could have just as easily been that other person in the grocery store. That I could have just as easily been my brother or my sister or a dog or a cat or a bird or a mouse. But I'm here, I'm a human being. So I think that's, and to remember absolutely as a fact, I know I'm a physical organism. I know I am a deterministic system. That this is a unique and it's a closed system, but it interacts with the world around it. So I'm trying to get the right word to use, but it's to explain it as that I am not you, I am not anyone else, I'm me. But on the other hand, I could have been just as easily had been you, or I could have just as easily have been someone else, or an animal, or a feeling, something else that feels it exists. So to disregard that, for somebody to scoff at the idea that oh, I'm the only one that feels, and they're scoffing at everyone else, and they're nihilistic and not concerned about the feelings and the welfare, that doesn't matter to anyone else or anything else, that one has to really have to have empathy. That once you realize that, hey, you are just as much as a feeling person, a being, as I am, or take an animal on a farm somewhere that's being raised for food. That animal, it is self. There's someone there that's not able to communicate in a higher level of some symbolic language, but they are there. There is a being there that's feeling there. So it makes one really have to consider about your diet. Okay, now if you're going and you're eating meat, or you're eating using animal products, or eating animals, or eating animal products, then you're forcing that animal to be there. You're forcing a farmer to have to raise an animal, and that animal is just as, it could be that it's living more in a dream state, but it still is there as it feels. It feels that it exists. It knows it exists. So in the highest regard for respect for other sentient beings, one really makes a determined effort to be a vegan, to only have a plant-based diet, which I'm trying to do. I've tried to do that. I'm pretty strict about trying to avoid, I'll eat the bean and cheese burrito once in a while, or I'll have something with some milk in it, or pieces of cheese in it, and I'm not, or there's egg yolk or something, or I ate an egg, or, not very often, but so I'm aware of that. I'm aware that if there is another animal involved, that animal, it was a sensitive organism, that it had its feelings, it had a life, it had to live, and that out of respect and out of empathy and concern and care for that, I'm not participating in that. I refuse to, if everybody's living around me is having barbecues and I go to work and everybody's eating meat or barbecuing, then I'm like, okay, what am I supposed to do? Just like, okay, not be around them and avoid people, but you got to live in the world, and everybody's around you. It's like eating burgers and eating hot dogs and eating ham and cheese and eating, and not just and not caring, not thinking about that there is a connection between food and an organism that had to be there to produce the food. So where am I going with this? Why should somebody be concerned about they could come into existence again? Because when you're dead, when you're dying, when this is over with, there won't be a me here to have to deal with a life, being alive again. It's obvious fact that when everyone's a unique individual and they die, and there's never anyone else like them. But on the other hand, everyone is a consciousness. So how can, if someone else comes about, it could might be just as well be you again. But you won't remember anything. You will have amnesia. It'll be a reset. But your consciousness will come back, but it'll be a reset. You won't remember anything, but you'll re-experience all over again. And I think that the idea of less and less and less and less people over time on the planet, and the idea of that of putting of controlling the amount of suffering in the wild world, in the world of where wild animals are, in reducing the numbers of animals that suffer, or coming to the aid of animals in a situation where there is a lot of suffering. It's a good thing, park rangers or managing wildlife, or not having as many farms, where they're breeding animals or raising animals, so all of the farms become just farms for growing plants. That would be a good thing. It would be a good thing if cows were rare. It would be a good thing if sheep and chickens and goats were only rare and only in zoos or out in wild areas, but that were managed, so that there wasn't a slaughter and there wasn't confined cages and full of animals that were being bred for meat for people to eat. That would be good. If those went away and they disappeared tomorrow, that would be great. And most people that are thoughtful people that think about what they're doing will realize that living as much as they can on with a plant-based diet is the best thing to do.